Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is Friday, the 9th of December, 2022, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail in the course of our show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif's statement, who has formally inaugurated the residential units constructed for the flood victims of Tank and Dera Ismail Khan districts. Now, he urged philanthropists on the occasion, as well as the business community, overseas Pakistanis, as well as business-friendly countries to adopt this model of housing and help rehabilitation process of the flood-affected people. The rehabilitation, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important in this phase of the post-flood catastrophe that has hit Pakistan. As far as the latest United Nations report is concerned, around 13 districts are still affected of Sindh and Balochistan by the floods. Around 8 million people are still affected by these floods. What needs to be done? How should and how important is it for the world to come as one, collectively together, and at the earliest to help those in need, as winter is upon us? And there are so many issues that are concerned with the winter, whether it be shelter, whether it be food insecurity, whether it be other issues. This is going to be our first segment, the rehabilitation of the flood affectees and how important it is for the world to collectively work towards that cause in Pakistan. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the global hunger crisis that has engulfed other countries, also Pakistan, because of these very floods that have engulfed Pakistan earlier this year. This is an escalating hunger crisis that is slowly and steadily rearing its ugly head in different areas of Pakistan, especially those who've been affected by the floods, especially in Balochistan and Sindh. The United Nations agencies have warned of a record hunger next year. Food insecurity, whether it is an important concern because of crises across the world or other issues that plague the economies of important countries that lead to hunger issues in developing countries and developed countries as well. What needs to be done? How should the world move forward, and how should countries like Pakistan also move forward under these conditions? This is going to be our second segment. Then we are going to talk about the apology that has been rendered by the Daily Mail to Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the withdrawal of each and every allegation of corruption from the publishers of the Daily Mail newspaper over an article that was reported by David Rose. The publication has also removed the article because there were no proofs ever seen as far as the allegations that were leveled by the Daily Mail is concerned, hence the apology and the removal and retrieval of all those articles that had insinuated that the current Prime Minister of Pakistan had anything to do with corruption allegations. And finally, we are going to talk about the cooperation between Pakistan and the United States of America. Masood Khan Saab, who's our ambassador in the United States, says that Pakistan and the US will continue to advance their shared anti-terrorism agenda and that Pakistan will also expand its partnership with the US on the economic realm, and they will continue to foster their ties as strategic partners. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the post-flood disaster rehabilitation. Our Prime Minister has highlighted this, whether it be in the form of shelters, whether it be in other forms. What needs to be done by the world body and those who are responsible for putting Pakistan under this current situation? More in the following report.
In monsoon season of this year, the world watched in horror as Pakistan was struck by unprecedented floods that rendered over 33 million people displaced and around 1,700 dead. Pakistan spearheaded robust climate diplomacy at COP27 climate summit in Egypt, demanding establishment of fund to help countries recover from damage caused by climate disasters. After incessant negotiations, countries adopted a final agreement at COP27 climate summit that sets up a compensation fund to help the poor countries being battered by climate disasters. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has urged the world community to stand up and take practical measures to deal with the issue of climate change. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance's report revealed that floodwaters continue to recede in many flood-affected areas of the country, but standing floodwaters continue to be present in 11 districts of Sindh and 2 districts of Balochistan. The report apprised that floods have had a significant impact on health in overcrowded scattered in makeshift shelters, damaged health infrastructure, and inadequate water and sanitation have compounded the risk of health hazard. China, US, and the UK have assured Pakistan of their full support in rehabilitation of flood-hit areas, as Islamabad is trying to shore up support of international community to provide all possible relief to the calamity-stricken people. The commitments made at Sharm el-Sheikh must be implemented because the climate-induced disaster that hit Pakistan could also hit other parts of the world.
Waqar Sherazi, who's a development sector expert, joins us in the studio. Waqar Sherazi, thank you very much to have joined us, to have taken the time to come in the studios. Waqar, when it comes to the resolution that has been adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, which was submitted by Pakistan on the behalf of the group of 77 in China to bolster United Nations humanitarian system to help those people who are struggling due to floods or due to such situations. How significant is this development, and how important do you feel Pakistan's climate diplomacy can lead to countries such as Pakistan and other countries that could be and would be affected by climate change to come out of the situation in a much better and a more timely fashion?
Many thanks indeed, Omar, for having me here. I think not in terms of the United Nations session only, but in terms of the session for COP27, Pakistan has pleaded the case for the third world countries. Those are not contributor of the climate change by producing less than 1% of the total carbon emissions of the world, like Pakistan.
True.
But they are facing the damages of the and the calamities caused by the climate change internationally in the world. I think Pakistan has been the pioneer to raise the voice that there must be a cost or there must be a reimbursement to the countries, those who are facing the damages of the natural calamities caused by the climate change in the world. So I think this was for the first time in COP27 that international community has agreed that they will be paying the damages to the communities, those who are not contributing for the climate change, but receiving the bad effects of the climate change.
Waqar Sherazi, ambassadors from the United States, the United Kingdom, as well as China have assured our Finance Minister, Ishaq Dar Sahab, of their full support to Pakistan for the rehabilitation of the people in the flood-affected areas. What, in your point of view, has been the role of these countries as far as this reconstruction and rehabilitation process and programs are concerned post the floods in Pakistan?
Well, I will be very honest in this way. I think this time the international community has not showed up as they should have, because the calamity hit to Pakistan was an epic scale. It was larger than 2010 floods, and 33 million people in Pakistan were affected. And it was larger than the population of many countries of the world. And the international community, they were staying back, sitting back and saying and watching how they can help. I think this is a positive move that the US, China, and Saudi Arabia and rest of the friend countries have come forward and assured their support to Pakistan. While 2010 flood struck Pakistan, there were more than 100 international NGOs registered on Pakistan Humanitarian Forum. Unfortunately, in 2022 floods, there were only 35 organizations registered.
A significant reduction in the number.
A significant reduction. It indicates that international community has lost its responsibility, sense of responsibility in helping the poorest and marginalized segments in Pakistan. And this has resulted in the catastrophe and in sufferings of many of the people who are still waiting for any international aid by any of the humanitarian organization. 33 million people were affected. 2 million households were partially or fully damaged. But rehabilitation process is a bit slow. I think that we must also admit our responsibility. We are a bit too late in calling the international conference for donors in Pakistan.
We are calling one in the beginning of January.
Yes, but it is a bit too late. Let it be very honest from my side. It should have been earlier in Pakistan.
All right.
I think now
the United Nations did, if I remember well, had pledged twice for Pakistan, but both the times the response from the world body hasn't been significant. Let's put it that way.
I think it is the history of the international community. The pledges are very heavy in their volume, but the actual commitments or they
and
often don't translate into
in your point of view, why is the reason Why is this so? What is the basic reasoning behind it? When behind these floods is carbon emission, and Pakistan is a
less than 1%.
Yes, exactly, 0.8% carbon emitter, when the main carbon emitters should have the responsibility to help Pakistan in this day.
I think the basic lacking factor is the political will of the international community. Right. They'll have to reflect upon, they'll have to show up with a committed political will. And there might be an internal fiscal challenges faced by many of the countries. There is an international crisis, there is a recession period in the world due to COVID. The world has just recently passed from the COVID age. That is also one of the factors. But I think the international community will have to reflect and will have to give priority to Pakistan and the people who are facing.
Maybe they'll have to redesign their strategy as far as their development sector is concerned, and how and when and in which manner to help the countries in need.
But that is the reason that I am stressing upon the significance of calling a summit inside Pakistan for the international community. So long as you don't call them within Pakistan, so long there would be a loose or there would be a passive reflection by the international community.
All right. So you wanted more active participation inside of the country, where, of course, the floods have wreaked havoc. Now, coming to the socio-economic fabric of our society, of different communities that have been severely affected by the floods, what are the severe disruptions? As a development sector specialist, what do you feel are the major disruptions that have wreaked havoc on the socio-economic structure of our societies, and what needs to be done and what has been done so far to mitigate the impacts of the post-flood crisis?
This is not an easy question to answer. There are so many variables spread across the society. I think the prime factor was that the earning sources of the people were lost. Many of the arable and agreeable lands were destroyed by the floods, which is the prime.
Cattle was lost.
Yes, the cattle were lost, the assets were lost in terms of housing and in terms of other assets, household assets. There was a certain support by the local community in Pakistan, but since they were not trained, so the passion went down even in the relief phase. And now the situation is that people are left without any wages, without any availability of jobs, without any sources to earn money, without any food, without any shelter. And there are reports that 13 districts within Balochistan and Sindh province are still submerged under the water. So the people are still affected. 8 million people are there in these 13 districts. But in 2 million distracted households, not even 500 households have so far been reconstructed, which is a dilemma in the country. So the winter is there. So we'll have to look upon that whether we are going to provide the people with shelter, which is one of the basic necessities of life, and which is the basic necessity.
Do you feel the residential units that have just been inaugurated by our Premier in Tank and Dera Ismail Khan need to be replicated on a quicker basis in all the other districts which have been affected by the floods?
Indeed, the international community, not in terms of NGO sector and the United Nations, but from the private sector as well, as we have observed in Dera Ismail Khan and Tank, that by a private bank, a model village was constructed. I think the business community in Pakistan and international business community will also have to join hands to deal with this epic humanitarian crisis, because no country in the world can deal with such a crisis on such a massive scale independently, lonely. So international community, either it is business community, either it is NGO community, or it is United Nations, they'll have to join hand to help us, to support us in dealing with the humanitarian crisis we are facing due to climate change and climate-induced calamity in Pakistan.
Waqar, Sherazi, when one hears the term climate resilient development, we have heard it many a times from Shahid Rahman Sahiba, we've heard it from our Prime Minister as well. What are the policies that you feel need to be put into place, implemented for the construction of flood and climate resilient houses and climate resilient development?
Climate resilience is not a short-term process. The climate resilience is based on the planning largely. It depends on creating the infrastructure. In particular case of Pakistan, we'll have to work on diverting the rivers into the rest of the 3 rivers which are almost dead, that is Satluj and Beas and the one other. So we can avoid the floods and we can change this catastrophe into an opportunity. But I think at the moment we'll have to focus upon the rehabilitation first, and then we'll have to go back to create resilience among the societies, and with the infrastructure, with trainings, with capacity enhancement of the people and the responding organizations.
When you talk of rehabilitation, Waqar, Sherazi, you know that you yourself said that 8 million people are affected in different districts of Sindh and Balochistan because of the floods, even currently as per the United Nations report. What needs to be done on an urgent basis in your point of view as a development expert so that the majority or all of these people survive this harsh winter?
Yeah. I think there is a crisis of food security in Sindh particularly and Balochistan as well. And Pakistan has been showing the highest wasting and stunting figures in Asia so far. So we'll have to deal with this food security crisis on the priority in the affected areas, flood affected areas of the country. But we'll have to focus also on providing the shelters to the community, because the winter is there and people are under the open sky. So it can translate into mortalities, or it can translate into deaths of the human beings if the shelters are not provided in time.
You know, when you talk of mortalities, the most significant sector of the populace that is going to be affected and has been affected are the women and the children. The women who were pregnant, who gave birth under these circumstances, the children who are in dire need of the necessary vaccines and dire need of the necessary type of foods in order to survive, in order to properly grow. They need the necessary nutrition. The United Nations report, including that from the World Health Organization, puts Pakistan in amongst the top 10 countries in the world with a large pool of under-vaccinated or unvaccinated children, and home to more than 600,000 children who have not received a single vaccine dose. That compounded with the flood situation that has impacted the children and the mothers. How can a country like Pakistan help these children, these mothers who are in dire straits, who need not only the vaccines, they need the proper medicine, they need the right shelter, and they need the right food?
Omar, there is a complex situation, as you have mentioned, that immunization rates in Pakistan are very low in terms of the regional rates. There is a behavioral approach towards that from the people as well, that people are hesitant to have inoculation. But there are many other problems. Pakistan has
water-related problems, just because of the floods, you don't have clean water to drink.
Pakistan has been running a free immunization program, EPI, since decades. But the significant achievement could not be achieved over the years in Pakistan. And that too compounded, as you have mentioned, with the catastrophe and the catastrophic situation created after floods in Pakistan. I think the immunization rates for children under 2 would be further low in the coming years. Pakistan has called upon an international support, not in terms of immunization, in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, in terms of rehabilitation of education institutes, in terms of trauma rehabilitation and recovery of the children, in terms of child-friendly spaces, and certainly in terms of reconstruction of housing units. But as I have mentioned, that international response this time is inadequate and dissatisfactory.
Then Waqar, Sherazi, what should Pakistanis do? What should Pakistan, under the current circumstances, where the response from the international community isn't as heartening or proactive as we had expected it to be, what should Pakistan do? How should Pakistan move forward in order to avert a more crisis in the country, in the form of hunger, in the form of food insecurity, in the form of disease, in the form of so many other things that are associated with disease, and of course climate change?
A lot has been done by the people of Pakistan. They have come up to react to the catastrophe. They have supported, they have joined hands to support their brothers. But in terms of providing more support to Pakistan, I think there should be a political consensus inside Pakistan first. Because unless, so long there is a political turmoil inside the country, the focus towards the international support and focus towards the rehabilitation of the affected population would be compromised.
True.
So Pakistani politicians will need to reflect upon, and they'll have to sit on the same table to create a consensus inside Pakistan, and all the focus should be on the rehabilitation of the people which are affected by the floods, and they are mercy of the nature at the moment. And internationally, I think we have pleaded a lot, and we'll have to beef it up further to bring in more support from international donors and international organizations. But I believe that we are not bad in this situation right at the moment.
All right.
I think there is a need for more sensitivity from the international community, which is lacking at the moment.
Let's hope that sensitivity comes before it's way too late, and it comes for a country like Pakistan that has been affected by the floods, which are not a fault of Pakistan. At least this time it's not a fault of Pakistan, it's a fault of the major countries that have been carbon emitters. Thank you very much, Waqar Sherazi, development sector expert, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the relief and rehabilitation process in Pakistan post the floods, and how important is it for the world to join hands with Pakistan to collectively help it come out of this current crisis. Thank you very much, Waqar Sherazi. Let's come to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns food insecurity. Now, hunger, of course, as you very well know, has created a very strange and crisis-like situation across the world, and the developing countries are lagging far behind as far as food security is concerned. Therefore, the food insecurity, the term that we use a lot nowadays, especially for developing countries, especially for countries like Pakistan that have already been impacted by the floods this year. More in the following report.
The world is facing a food crisis of unprecedented proportions, the largest in modern history. Global food insecurity has been exacerbated by confluence of competing crises such as persistent political instability, climate shocks, high food prices, the economic fallout from COVID-19 pandemic, and impact of conflict in Ukraine. The interplay of these drivers is making life harder each day for the world's most vulnerable and reversing recent development gains. UNICEF warned that almost 8 billion children under 5 in 15 crisis-hit countries are at risk of death unless they receive immediate therapeutic food and care, with the number rising by every minute. The number of hungry people around the world has shot up from 282 million to around 345 million since beginning of 2022, and by mid-year, World Food Program had reached just over 111 million in need, aiming to reach a record 153 million by year's end. The World Food Program requires $22.2 billion to reach 160 million people in 2022. However, with the global economy reeling from COVID-19 pandemic, the gap between needs and funding is bigger than ever before. At United Nations General Assembly session in New York this year, 238 organizations from 75 countries including Oxfam, Save the Children, and Plan International expressed outrage and skyrocketing hunger levels in an open letter. To avert global hunger catastrophe, everyone must step up alongside government donors and allocate necessary resources.
Inshan Ali Kanji, who is a policy advisor on the agriculture sector, joins us online. Kanji Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Kanji Sahab, when it comes to food insecurity, countries like Pakistan are extremely impacted because of the floods and also because of climate change. We see a lot of crops that have been destroyed because of these dastardly floods that happened earlier this year. In your point of view, what should be the immediate steps or measures needed to be taken by the government of Pakistan?
Well, thank you very much, Omar, for having me on your show. You see, right now it's a global crisis, as your report also mentioned, and this has been going on since 2020, when the food prices started increasing, and they've been increasing till May of this year, 2022. At unprecedented levels. Now, with Pakistan, of course, we're already facing food insecurity. Look at the import. We've been importing wheat, 2 to 3 million tons every year for the last 2 fiscal years. And wheat is our basic staple. So there is a level of insecurity. The rural areas, moderate to severe insecurity is almost 20%. And we, unfortunately, because of our lower production level and supply side issues, we've actually come to this situation. Now, immediately the government, what it needs to do is focus on the agri sector in 2 ways, in my opinion. One is make affordable financing accessible to the small farmers so that they can increase their land productivity by using better inputs. And the second is to develop an insurance pool for the climate change effects and to address them, to avoid food insecurity as well as protect the livelihood of the small farmers. So those
You
are
talk
two
of
actions, I
affordable
think.
financing, Kanji Sahab. I'd like to understand more of what you mean by that.
Okay. Okay. So right now, agri financing is roughly 5% of private sector financing in Pakistan. And if you look at the small farmer financing, there is a huge gap. There is a gap of almost 2.2 trillion rupees between what the farmer needs to buy fertilizer, pesticide, seed, certified seed. Now, the farmer, as in the 8.2 million farmers in Pakistan that we have, need around so uh, need around 2.6 trillion rupees. 400 billion rupees is being provided by the banking sector right now. So there's a gap of 2.2 trillion rupees. Now, if
All
we
right.
are able to increase the financing to the farmers, they will be able to purchase the inputs needed to increase land productivity. Immediately, Pakistan needs to increase land productivity. So if land productivity increases, the production levels increase, your supply increases. If there's more supply, then you're in a food secure position, right?
All right, Kanji Sahab, also you talk about an insurance scheme that is affordable for the farmers and that can help them, come out of any such situation that could engulf them in the years to come because of climate change, because of floods or any other such situation. Do you feel that the farming community also needs to be sensitized on how to go forward with such policies? Because I'm sure a lot of these farmers are either not understanding what this means or do not want to put in the necessary means in order to go towards that option.
Well, insurance, usually this kind of insurance for the small farmers has to be clubbed with some other product or service. So if it's clubbed with financing or say input sale, whether it's fertilizer or seeds, then it's easier for the farmer to use this service. At the retail level, to distribute it at the retail level is very expensive. So it's better to club this. And also, yes, you're absolutely right to create awareness amongst the farmers that look, this climate change and they're experiencing it. So they know this better than any of us do. And that is where, this is the time to actually go and market these products and create awareness with the farmer community to tell them about the benefits of insurance so that they are more amenable to using these services. But without, you see, there's, sorry.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, what is lacking right now in Pakistan is a clear roadmap, a strategy for agriculture insurance.
All right.
There's a concept of risk layering, but we need to have a long-term strategy where we can move it into a sustainable initiative covering our entire agriculture over the years. But that is clearly missing a strategic framework on agri
But
insurance.
this is also because of the fact that a lot of the farmers community, especially the small farmers, don't understand the whole concept of insurance that you've just talked about. Also, coming to Pakistan, it ranks 99th out of 121 nations on the global hunger index. And of course, as we all know, that floods have severely impacted the already situation that was very sensitive as far as the agriculture sector is concerned. 4.5 million acres of land have been affected because of this. The prices, of course, as a result of this have increased, whether it be of vegetables, whether it be of wheat in the country. Do you feel that the international community is cognizant of this deteriorating food insecurity in Pakistan? Do you feel that the world community needs to come forward in a more proactive manner?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they know what's going on in the country. But whether they're going to come forward to support Pakistan is, of course, a question mark. Now, recently at Sharm el Sheikh in the COP27 summit, there was this global shield financing facility which has been approved. I think that is one funding source which Pakistan should use, and Pakistan has been selected as one of the priority countries along with Bangladesh. So this is the funding that Pakistan should use to address these issues. And definitely, there has to be much more than just 200 or $250 million facility
Of course.
that should be made available to Pakistan because of the kind of damages. I mean, your channel is running around $45 billion. So this is clearly, and it's not our fault, right? I mean, we're less than 1% of the carbon emissions globally. So
Exactly.
the countries that have actually industrialized in the last 200 years and benefited their populations in terms of income growth, we are paying the cost. So they have a clear obligation to us to pay this amount to us in reparations. And this is a stand that Pakistan needs to take very firmly in the global community. Now, this
Kanji
should
Saab,
not be.
of course, that is an extremely important thing that Pakistan is doing, is going to all the different fora and highlighting this in all different manners and mechanisms possible. But we just don't see that reaction coming from the world body. Now, despite promises from the world leaders to never allow famine again in the 21st century, 15 million people are on the brink of starvation because of food insecurity. They don't have the necessary food to kind of, pass the day, have the necessary nutrients for their body to survive. Why is hunger crisis not dominating global agenda and world media, in your point of view? Because it's a very, very important aspect of the, the future of the humankind.
Mhm. You see, it does come in the news or different media channels, but the challenge, of course, is the implementation. There is just no implementation. Even after the G7, G20 countries committed to development aid to a certain extent, I mean, those commitments have not been met yet. So any commitments that these countries make, the follow-up action or the implementation is not there. So it's the flavor of the month. Everyone's talking about Sharm el Sheikh. Everyone's talking about COP27 right now, even in the international media. But I mean, maybe 15, 20, 30 days later, there'll be some other topic that will be discussed on these
That's quite
channels. Now,
unfortunate, isn't it, Kanji Saab? Because this is something
absolutely.
that needs to be highlighted on a regular level till such time that all the necessities are met with.
Absolutely, and Pakistan needs to see how we can, make sure that we are paid this amount in reparations, and our losses and damages are fully compensated for. That is something that Pakistan's leadership has to address at the international level.
Kanji Sahab, also, how can we as a country or as a nation or maybe even as a region, because we are not just one country, there are different other countries that are impacted by food insecurity as well, how can we strengthen the resilience of the local communities in the wake of floods that have impacted Pakistan, shocks that impact other countries in the world, conflict, global economic recession? How can we move forward?
Well, first of all, Omar Saab, I think the main thing is to grow enough food for our population and our projected population. So, for example, let me give you an example that we will need around 40 to 42 million tons of wheat per year in the next 10 years by 2032. Now, to get there, we will have to increase our wheat productivity to 4.7 tons per hectare from the current 2.9 tons per hectare. Now, these are elements that in Pakistan, we need to have a clear agriculture growth strategy for the next 7 to 10 years to meet our needs. Then we should have sufficient buffer stocks because wheat is a political crop globally. So, if you're out of political favor, you will not have your staple crop available in the country. Can you imagine not having enough wheat for our rotis in Pakistan? I mean, that will be a nightmare. That is why we need to make sure that, first of all, we have enough food in the country for our people and we have buffer stocks available. Like you mentioned, there could be conflicts. So we are in a volatile region. We're not in Western Europe. We're located in a volatile region. So we have to prepare for all kinds of eventualities. Secondly, we need to take advantage of our agriculture base to then grow industry and to export value-added agriculture products. And that is where we can actually get on a path of sustainable economic development, which you see from the current numbers of our economy, we've clearly not been able to achieve. Every time we grow, we are then stuck and slowed down because we are reliant heavily on imports rather than our local produce. So that's why, coming back to answer your question, is that a clear agriculture strategy for the next 7 to 10 years, and you do not need a lot of money for that as well. You can actually implement that by strengthening institutions, rationalizing institutions, and developing new institutions like the Agriculture Insurance Pool, like an impact investment fund for research in agriculture and innovation, and like commercializing seed by a government entity. For example, we've got Punjab Seed Corporation. We should have Pakistan Seed Corporation that runs the entire value chain of the seed business right to the small farmers. And that is where we can actually make a difference. But this all needs to be done, under a strategic framework, which is agreed to by all stakeholders. That's when the confidence will come, and that's when we can draw in investment also. Because unless we don't have investment, we cannot grow the agriculture
That
sector.
is so true.
And
You talk of strategic frameworks, Kanji Saab. The fact remains that the global economy is reeling from COVID-19, from the Ukraine conflict. Gap between needs, funding, the gap between needs and funding is getting bigger and bigger with each passing day. Isn't this more of a global responsibility than just a regional or a nationwide responsibility when we talk of food insecurity?
it is. It surely is, and we should, as I mentioned earlier, also this global food security, because of the climate change, should be the responsibility of the international community. But there is so much that we can do. I mean, we do not realize the kind of strength that we have. We've got arable land. We've got more than 80% of our agricultural land is irrigated. It's the reverse globally, but we've got 80% land which is not dependent on rain for agriculture. Now these are strengths. Plus we've got the different agroclimatic zones. We've got all crops, we've got food, fiber, we've got livestock. 60% of our agriculture is livestock. Globally, it's the other way around, where 40%, 30 to 40% is livestock and 60% is crops. And livestock is very important because as the per capita GDP increases, consumption of meat-based products, animal-based products increases in any country. Now that we are so well positioned with the composition of our agriculture sector, but we need to leverage this. We need to, as I said, have a strategy to make the most of the strengths that have been bestowed on us. Now, unfortunately, we have not been able to do that, which is why we are where we are today. I mean, our agriculture sector in the last 20 years has grown at a mere 2.4% per annum, which is almost at the rate of the population growth. To actually increase real income in the rural areas, we need to grow this at 6 or 7% per annum. But unfortunately, because of lack of a direction, a strategy, a focus, intention, our population has also lagged, as well as agricultural growth.
Kanji Saab, you talk on one hand about different mechanisms that need to be implemented or installed in place in countries such as Pakistan to overcome the challenges that are arising due to food insecurity. And you say this is not something that is going to cost a lot, but this is something that needs to be implemented now before it's way too late. And this is something that is implementable. At the same time, if we talk globally, if we come a little bit out of Pakistan, do you feel that the structure of food aid distribution needs also to be revisited in order to equally distribute food amongst the different genders, the different stratas of society across the world?
I mean, of course, there is, food security, which you mentioned initially, is access to all people at all times of safe, nutritious food of preference. And there has to be physical access, there has to be economic access. So and as we know, women usually lag behind in socioeconomic indicators, and we need to have a serious focus on this, because as always, gender gap is much greater in the rural areas than the national average, even in Pakistan. And globally, yes, there has to be a system. I mean, we operate under the World Trade Organization, which also regulates and supervises trade in food commodity and agri-commodities. But of course, we have to see how Pakistan can benefit from this, because usually these institutions are rely or have focused more on the developed countries and the interests of the developed countries. And we have to see how we can make the most of it, because, but as you said, it's the region we need to focus on. Always countries don't develop alone, the
Of course,
region develops.
of
So
course,
we
that is
have
so
to
true.
look at our region. We've got demand and supply both in our region, and we need to have our own. But first, we need to have our own strategy. We need to know where do we want to go and where do we want to be in the next 10 years. Only then can we work backwards and make the most of our geopolitical positioning, our natural resources that we have. But of course, a clear strategy needs to be in place for that.
Very wise words, Inshan Ali Kanji Policy Advisor on Agriculture Sector, to have ended this segment on a very interesting topic, and that is food insecurity. And as you said, the measures that need to be taken are measures that cannot be implemented, are implementable, are not very expensive, but they need to be implemented now so that we can look forward to the next 10 years in which Pakistan can become a more food secure country. Thank you so very much, Kanji Sahab, to have talked to us and to have joined us to talk about this very, very important topic, that is food insecurity. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns the Daily Mail. Now, Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif Sahab, has received a much awaited public apology as well as the withdrawal of each and every allegation of corruption from the publishers of the Daily Mail. Over an article that was written by David Rose, the publication has also removed the said article that was levelling allegations on the current Prime Minister of Pakistan, because it failed to prove the allegations levelled by its journalist David Rose. It removed the article on Thursday within minutes after informing the court it has decided not to go for the trial. It has also promised it is going to work with the search engine Google to remove every link that contained allegations of corruption against the incumbent Prime Minister. The agreement has been reached between the Associated Newspapers Limited, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Yusuf, who submitted before the Judge Matthew Nicklin in the UK High Court of Justice Queen Bench Division, that all parties have decided to withdraw their claims after it was agreed that it would apologise for the Premier and his son-in-law. Now, corruption is a very strong word, but at the same time it needs to be levelled with proper proofs, and when we don't have proofs, you need to also tender an apology, and this is what the Daily Mail has done. So of course a step in the right direction, and I hope a lot of others need to follow suit and learn from how Daily Mail has reacted. Our last topic concerns the cooperation between Pakistan and the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, Masood Khan Sahab, who is Pakistan's ambassador to the US, says that both the countries are continuing to advance their shared anti-terrorism agenda. He also said that Pakistan is going to expand its partnership as far as the United States is concerned in the economic realm. He also has said that Pakistan and the United States both are strategic allies, will continue to advance their shared agendas that include those on counterterrorism, those to foster regional stability and to strengthen the defense ties that already exist between the two countries. He made these remarks during a discussion on the road ahead, US-Pakistan relations and regional dynamics in 2023 that was organized by a US think tank. It is important, ladies and gentlemen, in the current scenario that Pakistan enhances and strengthens its relationship with all the important actors globally. And of course, the United States of America is one of the most important actor in the current situation. Pakistan and the US have seen up and have seen downs, but now both the countries are moving in the right direction toward a stronger, more robust collaboration and cooperation in different realms, in different fields. Let's wish them all the very best. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. This is the end of the week, so of course we'll see you inshallah on Monday with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. A lot of people are impacted by floods. This is what we discussed during more or less the entire show today. So do help those who are in need. Winter is upon them. There are 11 districts across Balochistan and Sindh that have been impacted by them. So do help in whichever capacity you can, whether by sending a text on 9999 and contributing 10 rupees, whether by helping the philanthropists, the NGOs, all the other organizations under the government or under the armed forces that are working diligently 24/7 to help those in need. Help those make Pakistan stronger. Allah Hafiz and have a great weekend.